Hello fellow Doctor Who fans and welcome to another rankings video. This time I'm ranking series 3 stories from worst to best, which starred David Tennant as the 10th Doctor. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe and hit that bell for more Doctor Who content coming your way. And if you haven't seen my previous rankings for series 1 and series 2, then be sure to check them out. And without further ado, Alonzi. Number 9. Daleks in Manhattan and Evolution of the Daleks. Are you surprised that this is at the bottom spot and not nearer to the top? Well, if you asked me about 10 years ago, then I'd be furious with the 2018 version of me. Bottom line, the Daleks became pathetic in this two-parter, and looking back, it doesn't really hold up that well, especially when you compare it to the other stories in this series. By the way, I don't hate this story. It's just a case of me preferring every other Series 3 story to this. It is certainly the worst Dalek story in the RTD era. Number 8. The Lazarus Experiment. This is a rather forgettable one for me, plus it's aged quite badly. Like Tooth and Claw, this story relies heavily on a CGI monster, and now it doesn't look that great. With that being said, this isn't a bad story. We get some character development on Martha and her family, and the Harold Saxon arc is teased, and Mark Gatiss puts in a good performance as Lazarus himself. Overall, not bad, but it isn't all that memorable. Number 7. Gridlock. Yeah, some might put this at the bottom, but this is a bit of a guilty pleasure of mine. I don't think that this story is all that great, but there's just something about it. I really like the premise of this story. It's the third story in the supposed loose New Earth trilogy, if you want to call it that, which began with the end of the world back in series 1, and this might be the best of the three actually. It is certainly miles better than New Earth, that's for sure. The reveal of the Macra being the villains of this piece was a nice little twist. At the time when I first watched it, I had no idea that the Macra were actually a villain from the past, so it's quite cool that they were brought back for this story, and it was even a bigger twist when the Face of Bo told the Doctor his secret before passing away. The story also has a great supporting cast, Ardor Hanlon being a standout. The ending is quite touching too. Number 6. The Shakespeare Code. Martha's first adventure on board the TARDIS was a nice historical romp, and it hit the right notes. The witches are alright, maybe a bit over the top, and Dean Lennox Kelly is good as William Shakespeare. I think that the climax of the story is a bit of a cop-out though. The best thing about this though is the interactions between the Doctor and Shakespeare. The amount of lines and references to other plays. It's quite funny to watch, to be honest. So yeah, alright this story. Number 5. 42. Chris Chibnall's first ever Doctor Who story, and quite honestly, this is underrated. It has an interesting villain, a decent supporting cast, and the part when the Doctor becomes possessed is pretty good. When I first saw this, I genuinely feared for the Doctor. Number 4. Smith and Jones. This is one of the best openers that has ever been done in the revived era. It's a good debut for Martha Jones, and David Tennant is sublime here. I love the Dune. It's ridiculous yet amazing that they are just basically space rhinos, and the story paces along very nicely. It is a good jumping on point for newcomers to Doctor Who, I'd say. Number 3. Utopia, The Sound of Drums, and Last of the Time Lords. These top 3 are amongst the best stories from the David Tennant era, so I suppose you could put them in a particular order, but this is my order. Utopia did so many things right, being the first of the only 3-parters so far in the revived era. It crossed over with sister show Torchwood, leading to Captain Jack Harkness's return. And then we got the return of the Master, which was one of the greatest ever cliffhangers ever devised in Doctor Who history. In the following part, The Sound of Drums, We got Ten, Martha and Jack travelling back to present-day Earth to stop the Master's rule, only to fail in the end. And then we got a great series finale, The Last of the Time Lords. My only real gripe with that, though, is that the end of it is just bullshit. Everyone says Doctor and then it turns young again after being aged hundreds and hundreds of years by the Master's laser screwdriver. Nah, I don't buy it. It's really one of the biggest cop-outs ever. But apart from that, I'd say that this is actually one of the best finales in New Who. Number 2. Human Nature and the Family of Blood. Here the 10th Doctor has turned half human, and he is running away from the villains of this story, which are the Family of Blood. Martha has took on the guise of being a maid. She is racially abused, in particular by Baines, who is played brilliantly by Harry Lloyd. What is it with this guy? He always seems to play bastards, doesn't he? And then we got the Scarecrows, a chance to see David Tennant play virtually a different character to his Doctor, a la John Smith, and Jessica Hines provides a good supporting role. I loved this story back in the day, and I still do now. The ending in particular is really powerful. It's a must-watch. And number 1 is Blink. And the most predictable entry goes to this. It's really funny because overall I find this to be quite overrated, especially when compared to the likes of other stories across the past 55 years of Doctor Who. Alas, this achieves number 1 today because to this day this story definitely serves as one of the best ever stories, and I can see why so many people do love it. I mean, it's not my personal favourite. A lot of people say, oh yeah, this is the best episode from the new series. I don't necessarily agree with that. It's certainly one of the best. Sally Sparrow is one of the best one-off characters in New Who, and the Weeping Angels are at their best in what is their first on-screen appearance. As a Dr. Light story, it is a huge contrast in quality compared to Series 2's Love and Monsters. This is the complete opposite, and I mean that in the best possible way. I do not think that this is the best way to introduce someone to Doctor Who, though, because it doesn't really define what the show is all about. There's much better options to start off with, like Rose or, as I mentioned earlier, Smith and Jones. With that said, this does have its first share of iconic moments. Do I really need to say more? Have a different opinion? I'd love to hear. Comment below and tell me what are your least favourite to favourite Series 3 stories. And make sure to subscribe and stay tuned for more Doctor Who videos right here.